All right, joining us now is Corey Mason. Corey, you're the executive director of the Dallas Safari Club, and we thank you for letting us come to your convention once again. This is so huge. Welcome.
Good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for letting me be with you.
Oh, excellent. So how many square feet are we talking about here that is filled up with all of this amazing good stuff?
800,000 square feet.
Damn.
Whoa. That's a lot.
That's almost as big as George's place.
Yeah. You got to see George's place out in the country. He built the castle out there.
I didn't either.
Yeah, George actually has kudu on his property. He's high fenced. George is high fenced.
I don't have
kudu.
high fence.
So what all does Dallas Safari Club do?
You bet. So our mission is really 3 tenets, and that's conservation, education, and advocacy. And that advocacy is as local as state government as well as international. We have delegates here right now. Actually, my next meeting is with a minister of a foreign country. And so we have many of those attendees that are with us. And our scope and reach is, again, it really relates back to the first word I said, and that's conservation. It's the wise use of our natural resources. And that really kind of sums up our actions. Our grants that are in excess of $1.5 million a year that are distributed globally to ensure wildlife and habitats.
And this is what frustrates me about people who protest hunting and things like that, and they don't seem to understand that hunters aren't interested in just raping the land and taking everything off of it and just destroying and mowing down everything. They're interested in preserving these habitats for these animals.
You know, that's exactly right. So my background is I'm a certified wildlife biologist. I spent the last 16 years working for Texas Parks and Wildlife as a in-the-ground, on the field, if you will, biologist. And, the role was we are funded largely by hunters, the state wildlife and fishing agencies. Most of them, 75%, are funded by hunters, but yet they work on all species and all habitats, from bottomland hardwoods to riparian to water ecology and stream ecology and water infiltration and all of the system approach. And essentially, again, 75% of that is funded by hunters. And, again, hunters are interested in system management. And yes, most systems, there is an opportunity to healthfully, and a science-based quota is used to healthfully take animals, and it's so misunderstood. People interchange hunting and poaching and all those things, and some people do that intentionally. It's unfortunate.
I know in this state a lot of people have worked, ranchers and people like yourself have worked hard for the habitat for birds like quail. How's that going? Are quail coming back? How are we like this year? Is it a good year for quail? Or?
Absolutely. So this year was not a great year for quail, but one of the predominant features of that is what winter and early spring moisture do we carry in will nearly almost always be about a 60 to 80% predictor of the upcoming quail hatch. And the reason for that being is that quail are a very specific nest. They have to have, a bunch grass to have a successful offspring that year. And when we don't have that, we don't have ample number of quail. I mean, we always have a sustainable population of quail, but in years where we have good winter rain carrying into the spring, we get that needed growth of grass and forage production as well. Quail numbers do extremely well. I mean, they're a cyclical in nature by bird. Every 2 or 3 years they're really well, 2 or 3 years they're not. They're up and down through time.
So go ahead, Junior. I wanted you to go ahead and ask a question right now.
Yeah, thanks, Gordo. Corey, I'm a new owner of a Daisy 880 Powerline dual action.
It's a BB gun. I guess it's a pellet gun, too.
It's dual action,
BBs
yeah,
and
thank
pellets,
you. And I've been doing a little hunting myself, squirrel.
He capped a squirrel the other day.
What's the squirrel population been like this year? They coming back or what?
Okay, all right. He's trying to bluff his way into – you're out of your depth here, Junior. But, yeah, he needs to get – first of all, I don't know that it's legal to hunt squirrel in your backyard. Is it?
We'll just leave that one alone.
Okay. All right. Doesn't he need, just to cover his ace for multiple purposes, get a hunting and fishing license?
That's always a good start. You bet.
Need to do
You
that.
bet. I'm going to do that.
And you know where the dollars are going. They're going to a good place, too.
That's right. See, when you get a hunting and fishing license, Junior, that money goes into conservation and things like that.
In fact, I've already got one.
He has not.
Where'd you get it?
This
ought to be good. Where'd you get it?
At the license store.
The license store.
Licenses are us.
All right, Corey, should people fear the power of the game warden? The game warden's pretty powerful, isn't he?
They do. They do have a lot of authority because not only are they certified peace officers in the state of Texas, they also have wildlife statutes. So their scope of authority is very broad.
Can they just come on your land and
they can come on your land and
beat
look
you
for
to a pulp?
kudu or look for your BB guns for squirrels and
Oh dear. Okay.
Okay. So we were talking with Junior a little bit earlier, and his first BB gun was purchased at the age of 67, just last week. How old were you when you first got your first gun, and what was it?
Yeah, so I was 6, and it was a pellet gun as well. and lots of plinking with it as well. I had a father that took me hunting at an extremely early age, and he's actually on the show floor right now, and hunted with him all my life, and I'm very fortunate for that. But took my first deer at the age of 9, so started going to the range at 7 and 8, getting competent, proficient, understanding the rifle well, and then was ready to get behind the gun at 9.
Do you guys have many protesters that show up to a big event like this? I think the Nevada convention had some protesters. Does this one have anything that you've noticed?
We'll have a handful, but I mean it will be less than 10 probably, and it'll be the same people that were here last year that'll keep their signs in their garage for the next year. And so it's minimal, and honestly, not to be rude about it, but it's just people that are uninformed. And when you have the opportunity to have a frank conversation, many times they say, "Oh, I didn't really realize that hunters funded state conservation agencies. That I didn't really realize that the weight of wildlife conservation has been carried on the backs of hunters since in North America since 1937."
Is it possible, though, for, let's take a continent like Africa and the countries over there, is it possible for photo safaris to generate as much money and income over there to preserve those habitats and to employ people and create a whole monetary ecosystem as it is for traditional hunting? Is that possible to be replaced?
That's a great question. It is not, but this is one of the things that I always respond with that with is it is a complementary business. And so there are specific requirements that are required for a photographic safari, and that is a well-developed infrastructure, because we're talking very large numbers of people. We need to have well-developed water resources in really dense concentrations of games, because people want to come in the bus and they want to get off and walk up to a spring or a water, whatever, and they want to see elephant and all kinds of animals readily available. And they want to have a lodge, and they want to be well-fed and all these kinds of things. That is completely the opposite of what happens in hunting safaris. Hunting safaris are very remote areas. It is far more costly. It's usually sometimes 5 to 10 times more costly because it takes a lot more infrastructure. It's not well-developed. The game are not densely populated. And so the two just simply don't occur in the same places. Thus, they don't really compete. Rather, as far as for economic reasons, the two should be viewed in complement of each other, not competing each other. But as far as the revenue that's generated, a photographic safari generates about the 10th of revenue of a hunt does. Yeah,
I think that's a big difference.
it is.
And so what happens, though, if, let's say that hunting was made illegal, for the person who doesn't understand the hunting issue, so if hunting's made illegal in Africa, what happens over there to the land in those environments for those animals?
You bet. So then there's no fiscal return. Those wildlife species have no value. Thus, those wildlife species will be poached and shot.
What do you mean they have no value?
So they have no intrinsic value to the locals, the people that live, that coexist with them. And I'm talking rural Africa, in which people in North America really can't understand what poverty looks like. They just really can't imagine what we're talking about. People that live sometimes generations in a mud hut, literally, with a thatch roof sometimes, and maybe even at night you have your livestock in the same room that you sleep in, because for fear of a predator killing them at night. And those 4 goats or those 3 cattle, whatever else it may be, is literally your entire existence of wealth and the crop that could be decimated in one night by a herd of elephant or buffalo or giraffe or whatever else. And so to understand that what that looks like in Africa, that if those wildlife species there do not have a value to them, because the way that communal conservation works is when a hunter comes from, say, North America, goes to Africa and hunts, it's extremely expensive in many cases. It's going to cost anywhere between $8,000 and $100,000. It depends on where they go and what species they're hunting. But a very significant portion of those dollars are required to be returned locally for local development, water development, schools and clinics, and all these kind of things are required. And in the absence of that, those species then, from those people that coexist with them, are just a nuisance, because they'll trap them and shoot them. They have no reason to manage them. And they'll cut timber, they'll mine, they'll kill them for livestock, which we're competing for for grass resources as well. And right now for hunting, whenever those hunters' dollars are returned to them, there's a reason for them to
it incentivizes them to maintain the habitat and to protect the animals from poachers themselves.
That's exactly right, and from poaching themselves. And so in many cases, we've actually seen those people that were former poachers, whenever hunters' dollars are delivered there, those people turn into the anti-poaching patrol, because they are safeguarding their resource that provides their existence.
Makes sense. Well, okay, so this is going on through the weekend. When does it end?
It ends Sunday at 3 o'clock.
Sunday at 3 o'clock down here at the Dallas Convention Center. It is the Dallas Safari Club's big convention that they do every year, and Corey Mason is the executive director of the Dallas Safari Club. Thanks for joining us, Corey.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks,
All
Corey.
right, thanks.
Thank you, Corey. Did I tell you I got a Daisy 880 Pro line?
You already have.
I did? Okay.
Doesn't have that much currency around here.
All right, that's 932 on the ticket. David joins us.